I have a quote here from a newspaper interview, the Irish Times, December 12th, 2010. One of our guests was interviewed in this piece and said, "A lot of times I reckon it's not worth it. I really wonder about that. Another All-Ireland, what is there to do? What is there to prove? What am I trying to prove now, and to who? I'm not coming up with the answers. It's not clear to me. It used to be." Paul, that was you speaking at the end of 2010. We're just over a year gone from then. Are you clearer now about your motivation? Are you happier?
I remember that interview. It was early in the morning. I wasn't in the best of form, I'd say. Yeah, I remember that. That was after coming off the back of 2010, I think, which was a difficult year for me in terms of just, you know, I had been suspended twice in the year, and just left me wondering, I think, about the game and what was left for me in the game, you know. And but no, I came around it really. I think it was a momentary. It was a kind of a transient time for me. It was around November time too, which is never a great time of the year to be mulling things over, I think. But no, I just decided subsequently that, you know, I was in a position where, in terms of motivating myself and looking at goals and that kind of thing, which I always like to do, I just reckoned that, you know, I was in the game now to see how good I could become and see you know, what kind of a stamp I could leave on the game, you know. So do you ever feel, oh, it's not really worth it, I don't actually love this game? Yeah, there was times, yeah, certainly there have been times. Last year was really difficult. Last year, as tough as 2010 was, last year was even more difficult, you know. And I did really consider whether I would play on. I had a couple of conversations with Jack about it, and I was really close to going, you know. But I just felt that I had more in me, you know, and I felt that I could, especially with the younger guys. I was really enjoying the dressing room whilst I was not getting game time. The dressing room was a great place to be, the Kerry dressing room, you know. I was really,
Paul, was there a tipping point there for you where, obviously, by 2010, maybe when you set out your stall and you started in 2002, you want to win All Irelands and Munster Championships and, you know, be a regular on the Kerry team, and you got to a point where you'd done all that and you'd had a bad year, and the question is, you know, what I've done what I wanted to do, why do more? And now maybe you're looking at it differently. You're talking about legacy, which is interesting, that, you know, you now want to go on and prove to yourself and that to be the player you can be, and when you finish, look back at it. Maybe there's a tipping point there for you, like in changing your goals, maybe.
Absolutely, there was a tipping point, yeah. And I can remember the reason at the end of 2010 I was browned off really, you know, was because I had set goals, you know, and I felt like the form I was in and the way I was playing, I would have met them, you know. But then I wasn't able to, and that was disappointing because I just felt it was a real opportunity lost, and you do become a little dissolute. But I think every player.
What was the moment then, if there was a specific tipping point?
Well, I just that moment where I said, you know what, it's not about setting goals, it's not about winning X, Y, and Z anymore, really. You know, how can it be if you've done it a couple of times or whatever, however many times? I just felt, especially with the younger lads, and I think we've really good young fellas we can carry at the minute that are really hungry, and I felt I could help them. I felt I could just throw off the shackles a little bit and forget about goals and go and play and see how much I could improve my game and see how good I could become, and try and give back to the fellas who've helped me and played with me and stood by me at times as well. You know, I felt that was important. And
what about you? I mean, there are two sides to you. Everybody acknowledges you as possibly one of the most talented, if not the most talented footballer in the country. And yeah, over the last 2 years, it's all the other stuff that people have cottoned on to.
Yeah, it's something that I think, I don't know, it's funny. I find that if I do things out of line, they do become bigger stories than maybe they should. But then I have done things that were out of line, so, you know, I've had to take stock of myself really at times in the last 2 years in particular, and examine myself and see, you know, where I have certainly been out of line and how to correct it, and then try and rationalise situations where I felt I wasn't too out of line, yet got the stick anyway.
Did you move to Dublin, Paul?
Did I move?
Were you living in Dublin?
I was for a period, yeah.
How did you find that?
Difficult.
In what way?
Well, I was trying to rehab this hip for a while, and I found that difficult to do. But I also found that I thought I could come up here and that I'd be able to float around and be anonymous and train and do that college course. But it was impossible to do. It was impossible to do. Be it in or around campus on DIT or on the Lewis or around town. It was a totally different world that I was totally unprepared for, because you just couldn't, you know, it was. And Twitter, then you
recognised everywhere.
Yeah, it was funny. But then again, like you know, I think GA now has become a higher profile game and people will recognise you. But you know, it was funny. I'd walk around the street, or I'd be walking into a shop around the Lewis in particular, because I used the Lewis quite a lot. And the next thing, I'd be 10 minutes after getting off the Lewis, I'd have a tweet, and it would be, standing next to Paul Galvin on the Lewis. He's not that big. He's like smaller than my father. Just met Paul Galvin in Centra. buying Esquire magazine, you know, and, that brings its own kind of, you know, it's very voyeuristic, the Twitter world, and but it's enjoyable too. But yeah, I did find it. Possibly I was a little naive coming up here now, Paul, to be honest. But I had to, and I'm still up and down a little bit, and but I have my base down in Kerry, you know, which is important for me as well.
Yeah, I'm just interested that you're going back now. Is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm back down there more or less full time now.
Why did you leave the teaching in the first place? You were an Irish and geography teacher in St Brendan's College.
Do you know what? I took a view that if I was to prolong my career and prolong it, I suppose, and try to be more professional, because I was getting to the stage where a training session for us would take 2 hours or 3 hours of your day, maybe 3 times a week. But recovery from that training session would take 2 days. You know, so I just felt that if I was to really try and get the best out of myself, there were a couple of different reasons now, but this was a consideration that, you know, going into an Ireland semi-final, let's say, because every year I had been teaching, I had been going to the closing stages of championship. Every morning after an Ireland semi-final, I would have been in class the Monday morning. The build up to an Ireland final, I would have been in school. Getting time off had become more and more difficult with the department, and, you know, really having to cut down on getting time off and stuff like that, and I was proved right in the end with the hip injury, because as tough as it was to rehab it, like, there was no way I could have rehabbed it and continued walking around the school, standing up in the classroom, because it was a very intensive rehab. But then there was other stuff that I'm interested in, you know, and I just felt that I couldn't see myself teaching for the rest of my days either.
Yeah, you have talked before. I remember in the filming of Galvanized, during that time, that documentary that was on, you had quit teaching, and you said that essentially
and I did quit, by the way. It was, I think some people are of the opinion otherwise, but I did actually, yeah, just say, listen, that's it for me.
Yeah, you found that it was a bit too constricting and you wanted to be more creative, but I'm struck by that, because the best teachers I remember in school were creative, and I was wondering, did the classroom not give you an environment that you could do things a little bit different?
It did, and I really enjoy teaching. But then you're teaching Irish as well, you see, which is kind of, it's difficult enough to be creative with Irish, because kids nowadays, I think, aren't, unless they have some natural inherent Irish, it's very difficult to teach it, because they don't have a whole lot of interest, and the curriculum doesn't help either. But you find yourself, do you know what I found? I found myself repeating myself a lot, which is just the antithesis to creativity. If you find yourself repeating something and repeating, and the next day then they've forgotten it again, and you're repeating it, you know, I felt
as a former teacher myself who left teaching, there must have been a morning you looked out the classroom window and said, this isn't for me anymore.
There was certainly, there was a few
That's
mornings.
some of those moments.
This new career you've embraced has presented you with a few problems as well. I mean, fashion writer is a particularly, for a GAA player, fashion writer is particularly courageous.
It is, again,
and
I was probably a bit naive going into that as well. But I mean, on that, we'll say, like, I never got out of teaching to get into that. I didn't plan anything. I'm not a man for plans, really, in terms of I just tend to go on stuff, and I just felt like a change, and I went for a change. But a couple of things I was hoping to I was looking for didn't really work out, and that came along, and I'll be honest with you, I actually wasn't working at the time. I wasn't working at the time, and I have teammates who are not working now, and it was a job, and I'm good at it, and I enjoy doing it, and obviously, again, I was a bit naive. I never saw the furore, but I probably should have, or not the furore, but, you know, it is quite two different worlds, you know.
Does it impact on how people react to you? Has it impacted?
It has a little bit. I think it has a little bit, yeah. But I mean, that's fair too. I think that's more a reflection on other people than it is on me. I think I've seen, people have been great. I've had a great feedback from it. But I mean, people take it too seriously, you know, and certainly, I've seen some ignorance, you know. I've been kind of exposed to a lot of ignorance, I think.
Abuse?
A little bit, yeah.
My daughter was at the All-Ireland final, and she told me something that was quite shocking. She said that when you came on, that the guy in front of her let out a big shout, "Pull up your socks, you faggot, Galvin, you faggot."
Yeah, well, sure. That says a bit more about him than it does about me.
Absolutely, but
but there is that, I've seen that side of it, and like I say, it says more about the people involved, the individuals involved, or whoever it might be, than it may say about me. And it's a poor reflection really on where we're at as a nation. But I don't think that's the case really I've seen bits of it, but not a huge amount of it, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll hold that next thought because we do have to take an ad break. Back after these.